So let's show them who we are. Put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up. Tell me, can you feel it now? Put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up. Shake it out through the ground. Come on, come on. Put your hands up, put your hands up. Put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up. Put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up. Tell me, can you feel it now? Put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up. Shake it out through the ground. Thank you.
If we want to make the world a better place, we have to become a better person. Become it. Not just acting better or acting a certain way, not just trying to fit in, but actually shifting, which is sort of what transformation is. Transformation, by the way, do you know what transformation means? If you look it up in the dictionary, it means to be radically changed. Now, who would sign up for that? Transformation sounds like such a nice, cool thing, you know? It's such a cool thing. Transformation, woo. It's different than radically changed. Who signs up to be radically changed? Now, we might want to radically change them and it and her, but not me necessarily. And yet it is to be shifted from the inside out. I want to give you an illustration of that. I particularly had an incredibly powerful experience. You know, I love letters, they disappear. Love letters disappear. I love letters. That disappear, not love letters disappear. Anyway, I had a really transformational experience last week when we were really allowing ourselves to experience the intimacy that comes from sacred service, the intimacy that comes from karma yoga. When we seek connection, there's something that happens that it expands us. And I remember talking to some people on Tuesday that I had felt that shift, and I was different just by being in the room. And then I also got this letter. Good morning, Kathianne. I want to let you know what a powerful experience I had at church last Sunday. When I knelt before, sang to, and held love for perfect strangers, I shifted. Today, during my morning practice, I visualized people I know and share my life with while singing to them. And I know she was on this side of the room, so what she was singing is, "The God in me beholds the God in you." And then she would go, "Namaste." So she was singing that song through spiritual practice, and she realized how differently she felt. Now that difference is a transformation. That's what we're talking about. She didn't have to like hope good and kind of love them. There was this opening of the heart to let love flow. That's transformative. That is what transformation is about. And what I realize is that all spiritual and mystical practices from all over the world, they have a purpose, and that purpose is personal transformation. It's not to make us nice, not to keep us in line. Mystical and spiritual instructions, practices, downloads that came into somebody's mind, and then they wrote them down and they invited other people to join them. Those particular practices were for the purpose of allowing that person to transform their human experience into a spiritual expression. To grow up, if you might, if you want to look at it that way, to grow into their own spiritual magnificence, to grow into it. And it's evolution, but it seems transformative. For instance, How many of you have watched your children transform year after year after year as they grew up? They liked this, then they didn't. They were this way, then they weren't. And they just sort of evolve into a greater expression of what's in them, what's in their spiritual DNA. They evolve into it. Does that make sense? We are going to evolve. The world will evolve. Our culture as a human race will evolve. And spiritual practices make it quicker and more grace-filled. Hafiz said it this way. And by the way, I just want to tell you that he didn't say the word God or Allah or Allah or the great universal love intelligence that rules all things and is the cause of all things and therefore will also be the end of all things and the middle of all things. He didn't say that. He just said friend. Always capitalized, friend. So he said, a divine invitation. You have been invited to meet the friend. No one can resist this divine invitation. That narrows down your choices to just two. We can come to God dressed for dancing or be carried in on a stretcher into God's ward. So we can go with a delightful anticipation of spiritual transformation, or we can go kicking and screaming, and we're still going to transform. This is, God plays the long game. That's all there is to it. Well, today I want to invite you to consider transforming your relationship with prosperity. This particular month, even though we're talking about transformation, it's also been historically, it's been historical for us, or I guess we would say a tradition, to talk about prosperity issues and prosperity consciousness during the month of October. So our book of the month is The 4 Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, and it's written by a wonderful woman named Edwene Gaines. And before I get into this whole issue of wanting to talk about her book, and I need to talk about, how many have heard Edwene Gaines? She's got a way. It's just a way, and yet it's so powerful, a way that she talks. Anyway, I'm done. I just want to say a few things about prosperity. It means to flourish. Prosperity means to flourish. And if we have something or have an idea, we want it to flourish. We want our life to flourish. We want our relationships to flourish. We want our business to flourish. We don't have it to die. We don't put energy into something so it withers away. Prosperity is to flourish, to do well. My husband, he has a green thumb. I mean, really, he has a green thumb. Except ever since we moved to Snohomish County. We used to raise tomatoes, and we couldn't give them away fast enough. Big, fat, wonderful, red, sweet tomatoes. Healthy plants. I don't know what's happening in Snohomish County, although he might be giving them a little too much manure. But anyway, because we have a lot. Anyway, they just don't do well. And so I totally support him when he said, I will never plant tomatoes again. I don't want to spend all this time and energy and love on them and have them just wither. I don't want to do that. They're not flourishing. I'm not going to participate. We want things to flourish, don't you? Don't you want that? So that's what prosperity is. Prosperity just means what I'm interested in, what I love, what I care about flourishes. It feels better. And she's got some great ideas about this. Now, I'm going to start at the back of the book because that's what I do. Some of you know, some of you need to know. This is what I do. I read the front of every book, and I read the back of every book. And if I like the end, I will read the middle. If I don't like the end, I don't bother with the middle. It's just crazy for me. So I'm going to start at the back of the book. That's what I would do. And in the back of the book, she talks about purpose. Now, I have to say that when Edwene Gaines talks about purpose, a lot of the time what she's talking about is intention. So for those of you that were around in January and you heard what I have to say about intentions, this will be a great review. For those of you that weren't around in January and didn't hear what I said about intentions, this will be perhaps your first instructions. But I love intentions. I think they're incredibly important, and I think it's a great way to live intentionally as opposed to accidentally. Purpose, it's like, are you living on purpose or are you not living on purpose? When we live on purpose, that purpose starts to organize our life. If we're not living on purpose, what happens is things happen, but they're in disarray. So let's go back to this idea of intention, and she talks about it a lot. Intention is allowing yourself to have an idea, and according to her words, and I'm just going to use them, then being committed to that idea. Instead of having an idea and knowing that it will never happen, so you give up immediately. How many of you have been there? How many of you, your mind starts to go out and our mind can function like this. You know what I hate about language? One word at a time. I hate that. First service, I noticed that I was up here and there were 8 different things going off in my head, and I thought, but I can only use one word at a time. How limiting. I really like this whole idea of Spock. Just come up here and touch my head and I could be done. Because really, I have this whole universe of stuff happening right now. But I can only use one word at a time. So let's go back to intention. Intention is having this idea and allowing that idea to pull you to it, to move you to it. But many times people will have an intention, and at the same time that intention wants to grow up, instead of having it prosper and flourish, we determine it's impossible. What a frustrated way to live. How frustrating. It would be like, whoop, there'd be no newness. It becomes the same old because you got to use something. You got to be doing something with your life, and what you find yourself doing with your life is the same old because nothing new can spring up because it knows you're going to kill it. Now, there's a few ways to handle intention. What she says is to commit to it. And if you commit to it, then you tap into divine intelligence to determine what is your next step to move towards it. After you've committed to it, what is your steps to move towards it? Now, what can happen in the mind, and I heard it in someone right over there, the thing that can happen in the mind is this statement, I don't know how to move towards it. I don't know. I don't know is a lie. Because we all exist in an infinite intelligence that runs everything, and we're a part of it, so we have access to as much intelligence as we need at any given time. And if we say, this is my intention, and I now know what my first step must be, we will know what our next step will be. Instead of determining it's impossible and then letting it go. So she tells this great story. And I got to tell the story too. She tells a story of early in her ministry, she really wanted to see Halley's Comet because it was only going to come around once every 70 years, and she figured this was her time. And the best place to see Halley's Comet was in the South Pacific. So she thought, ooh, yay, Tahiti, Halley's Comet, yay. So she looked to see how much it would be to be on a cruise and cruising around the Tahitian Islands as she was, at the same time, the Halley's Comet was going by, and she found out how much money it was, and she decided she really couldn't afford it. But her intention was to see Halley's Comet in the South Pacific. So she said, divine intelligence. Now, by the way, you guys, this story is your story. There is a divine intelligence. We are in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of us. There's always something that we can turn to and gain instruction from. So she said, divine intelligence, what's an idea? What could I do? How can I participate in the fulfillment of what she called her purpose, which I would call her intention? And she got this idea. I got it. I'll put on a seminar at sea. And so she called the cruise company and found out it only took 18 people. And she said, I could do 18 people. She didn't know how she was going to get 18 people, but everywhere she went, she talked about the seminar at sea. And she started doing talks and going out places and doing these little vignettes and then saying, oh, and I'm going to do a seminar at sea. And pretty soon, more and more people started signing up. And this one person signed up, and I have to tell you this because this is also part of intentions. This woman named Maggie at this tiny little church signed up for her seminar at sea and gave her a check because everyone to sign up needed to give $1,000 down payment for the seminar at sea. And Maggie gave her a check, and when she got home, the check was for $10. So she called Maggie and she said, Maggie, you misunderstood, honey. It's not $10, it's $1,000. Now, did you forget some zeros, or was I not clear? And Maggie said, oh, you were very clear. And no, I didn't forget any zeros. That's how much I have right now, and I'm going to be on that trip. And she said, well, it's going to cost you $4,000. And Maggie said, every time I get some money, I'll be sending it to you. And Maggie did send her money, $3.50, $4.25, $5, $7. And pretty soon she was up to $93.50. And the cruise was 2 days away. And every time she would say, honey, you don't have enough money. I'm not going to be able to take you. Can I send you back your money? Maggie would say, you keep the money because I'm going to be on that cruise. So good news. Through intentionality, she got 18 people. And Maggie's $93.50. And 2 days before, one of the women called and said, I have a family emergency I must attend to. I know I can't get my money back. I know you can't get your money back. So just include somebody that wants to go on the trip. So Edwin called Maggie. And she said to Maggie, you'll never believe this. Somebody canceled and they're going to give you the trip. And Maggie, and I can't believe it. You're going to be on the trip. And Maggie said, well, you should have believed it. I believed it. My bags are packed and by the door. I'll see you there. Intentionality. See, sometimes we are set back by facts. We were born to be creative. Creative to know how to go over, under, around. And if we can't go over, under, around, God will put us through. I want to give you another example of that, and that comes from my friend John. Hi, John. John lives in LA, and boy, he's really getting this stuff down. And he proved it again to himself, I think it was last Friday, when his daughter, who had saved and saved and saved and saved, was going to take her son and her husband to Australia to visit her sister. It was a lot of money for them. They put a lot of effort into saving up the money. And they get to the airport early and find out that her passport has expired and she doesn't have a passport for her child. And they won't let her even check in. So John gets a call at 6 o'clock in the morning with his daughter crying and sobbing. I can't go. You're not going to be able to go. And John takes a deep breath, remembers what he's been learning, and he says, is it your intention to show up there and be there? Now, this is a grand opportunity for her to do a number of things. Blame the system. What do you mean my child needs a birth certificate? What do you mean I'm a little bit overdue on my passport? Or blame herself for not checking on what it took to fly internationally. And either one of those would have been great excuses to say, we can't do it. I flubbed up. and stop. And she says, I want to be there. So he said, I'll call you back. He found out where the passport, the closest passport office was. It opened at 7. They were there at 7. They had all the documentation they needed except for the baby's birth certificate. They can't get back to San Diego and back in time before it closes. So he says, well, what's the next step? See, it's step. What do you think the next step would be? Get somebody to get the birth certificate here. Great. Call the mother-in-law. Great. She found it in the house. Great. They met her halfway. Great. They get back to the office in time to have everything done, and in 2 hours later, they get their birth certificate. They get their passports. They rush back to the airport. There's another flight off. Yay, guess what? They have to buy more tickets because the first were non-refundable. And he called again. She called again. And he says, what's your intention? Do you see how many of you have ever been here? Every opportunity to drop the dream. Now, they've done everything they could. They did their steps. They walked through it. Here's one last one. And the agent says, if we get 3 cancellations, we'll put you on standby. But nobody cancels this trip. It's too expensive. When people decide to go to Australia, they go to Australia. Guess what? There were 3 cancellations in the same row. Just made for a family. Intentionality is powerful. But you have to let your heart always lead you. Tell you what your step is, and if you've walked through everything you can, then you have to just let something else take over. Intentionality is powerful. That, I believe, is Edwin's spin on things. She also talks a little bit about purpose in life, which I think is a wonderful idea. To have a life purpose it helps center you. It gives you your North Star. It gives you your direction. It's fabulous. And purpose, the way I look at it, is always why. There's actually a book out now and a TED Talk on why. But I've known, I found it first, but for a long time I knew that purpose was why, and I've taught this for a long time. Purpose is your why. It is your directive principle. Why organizes all of your activity. If you're not clear on why, you will have lots of activity, but no clear results. And there will be no satisfaction in your results. So you can have it for your life purpose, and that's a very deep thing, and we've spent a lot of time in it, and I work with people. I've had classes on it. It's way too big a subject to handle right now. Huge. It's a huge subject. But boy, knowing what you're here for, it helps you cut away all sorts of other things that don't really serve you. Because a lot of us do a lot of things and it's unfulfilling and unsatisfying. It's like eating straw. There's no nourishment in it. How many of you have had some unnourishing activities? It's perhaps because they did not pull out and support your why. But let's move out of life purpose why and go into just all the time why. Why do you do what you do? It's a good question. And it helps you organize your activities and what you do and how you do it so that you do feel supported and nurtured and satisfied at the end. For instance, and I use this a lot when I'm talking about intentions. If you're going to throw a party, know why you want to throw the party. Do you want to just have a lot of bubbly conversation and touch base with all 50 people you haven't seen last year? Or do you want to have meaningful discussions? How many of you like to have just a lot of people and how many of there? 1, 2, 3. Great. 4. We're up to 4. 5. Thank you, extroverts. Now, how many of you want to have deep, meaningful conversations? You would plan your party differently than the other 4 people in the room. Really. I got very clear recently that the reason I want to travel is to be spiritually fed. If I'm going to spend my time and my money, if I'm going to go through what we have to go through to get horse sitters, it better be spiritually rewarding. I'm very clear. I need to be fed that way. So I go to places that have a reputation and a history of being spiritually nurturing to the people that are there. So if I know why I want to travel, then it helps me organize my travel. Does that make sense? So it's important for us to look at, why do we want a relationship? Why do we want to have children? Why do we want to have a job? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to write a book? Why do you want to sing? Why do you want to do anything? And when you are in alignment with that why, your actions will start to be in alignment with that also, and the results will be nurturing, satisfying, and fulfilling. It's important. For instance, if I asked you, why do you want a job, and you said to pay the bills, how does that sit? To pay the bills is like eating straw. But if you want to work with people you enjoy, and you find that you have a common goal, and you're providing something that others want, doesn't that feel more satisfying, fulfilling? See, too many people settle for straw. They settle for paying the bills, and then they hope for a vacation, or they hope to retire. It's not perhaps the way to live. I'm going to bring up what happened at the Cascade Mall. Number one, I'm sorry that I didn't spend more time on it last week, but there was just so much going on in the whole world. It's like, which shooting do you address? And it's becoming way too commonplace. And I certainly don't want to go numb. One of the things that was said about one of the women that was shot, who actually worked at Macy's, is that her purpose in life was to make people pretty. So she worked at the makeup counter. She wasn't working to pay bills. She worked to make people pretty. I'm sorry that her life was cut short, but I bet until her life was cut short, it was full. I don't know when any of us are going to be released from this incarnation, but what I know is I want to be full until then. My particular purpose in life is to facilitate people growing closer to their God, therefore bringing harmony into their life. And harmony is another word for heaven. To facilitate whatever in any way I can. And sometimes I show up as a jokester, a jester. Sometimes I show up as a midwife. And sometimes I show up in classes as a poultice. I just draw all the icky stuff out. But whatever I'm doing, my purpose is that people grow closer to their God, because I have this funny idea that everything goes better with God. It's like the universal condiment. And life just goes better with God. See, that was the jokester. I want to talk about one other aspect of purpose. And it has to do with purpose and motive. Because motive and purpose kind of go together a lot. Why are you doing? What's your motive? What's your purpose? And when we have a purpose that is greater than ourselves and it is for good, if our motive is good, good will happen through our purpose or motive and not necessarily through the execution, which is a great relief for some of you who are perfectionists. Because we live in a complicated universe right now, having to address all sorts of different things at all sorts of different levels, and we have so many different types of people to communicate with. Used to be a little village. We grew up with them. We knew them. We knew how to react. We knew every little facial tick. And now we're meeting new people we've never known before, and we have to have meaningful conversations and then never see each other again. It's just wild. So it can be daunting to figure out how to be in this world. But the principle of goodness says that if your motive is good, then good will work through you. It was taught by the man Jesus when he was chastised by the church at that time, the Jewish church, the ruling church of Jerusalem. He was chastised for healing someone on Sunday. And the church leader said, we don't do that. We don't like that. You're not supposed to do that. And he said, well, I watch what God does, or what he called it his father, his connection. By the way, the Aramaic interpretation of father could also be origin. I watch my origin, and I know it's always doing good, and I'm going to do what it does. My motive is good. You're just going to have to accept that. And out of that came a blessing, and the man was healed. Motive is important because we will always fall short of our own ideal for execution. Isn't it true? How many of you have conversations after almost everything about how you could have done it better? Isn't that wearisome? I can honestly say that in the last 9 months or a year, I don't think it's been more than a year, and it may have just been 9 months, but just recently have I quit mercilessly critiquing myself after a class. I would be driving home from class, and I have way too long a drive. I drive home from class, and I think of all the things I could have said, how I could have responded differently, how I could have caught that question, how I could have turned things around, how I could have given a better example, how I could have been more prepared. Oh, and by the way, all the stuff I did prepare, I didn't say. What's that about? All of this stuff. And I would always then shift it and say, you know what? You know my motive was good. Bless what I did. I did the best I could. My motive was good. Bless what I did. And next week I'll show up and people say, oh, you know what you said, it changed my life. And I think, I've never said that ever. But nice that you think so. See, when you let motive bless what you do, people will give you credit for what you've never done. It's so cool. Now it goes in the reverse too. When you're doing something and you even do it right, and you do it flawlessly, but your motive is not good, that will come back at you. And the way it'll come back at you is you will stop your evolution. Because to seek good is to be good, and to be good is to be God. And we are to evolve into our spiritual magnificence. To have, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, have it be a reality and not a platitude. So always check your motive and let the purpose be for good. So since my purpose is to facilitate you moving closer to your God, let's pray. And your God is your good, so my purpose is also to facilitate each and every one of us moving closer to our stated intention, our greater yet to be. So I invite you, if you will, to hold your intention, a new intention, or perhaps a long forgotten intention, but to hold it in your heart and in your mind and in your consciousness and to love it. To love it. Now ask intelligence. Simply, perhaps like this: I know that there is one love intelligence that lives through and expresses as all creation. And I am a part of that creation. So therefore, I cannot be separate from intelligence. So therefore, I now let that intelligence speak to my human mind and instruct me so that I know what my step, my part of moving towards my intention is. I know what I am to do this day. I know what I am to think this day. I know what I am to be called into this day. I know it. I know that I know, and I know that I know that I know. And that intention and I are not separate, for there is no separation in the universe. That intention is calling me to move into that which is a greater expression of my life. And I know that it is good, for Ernest Holmes said that I can accept anything that expresses more life and harms no one, including myself. And this intention harms no one. It expresses life. And therefore, I embrace it with my heart, my mind, my consciousness, and I know that as I pull towards it, it pulls towards me, and the two shall become one in this holy union of present and future. And I am made new. And this transformative action within me allows me to be the person that would naturally live this intention. For this is not about acquiring. This is about becoming. Hold it down. Hold that intention. And I speak my word of blessing as Kathianne Lewis, a servant of the Most High. And to bless is to know the good, and I know the good is happening now. I know good is happening in the minds and the life and the consciousness of everybody here. I know good things are happening, and I bless the intention, and I bless the one who holds that intention, and I speak my word that that intention shall flourish, and it shall thrive, and it shall bear fruit, and there shall be enough fruit for everyone to share, for the intention will not only bless the one who is holding it, it will bless others, because that's the way God works. That's the way we work. We affirm it now. We are it now. We live it now. And so it is.